Welcome to the Stop Suffering in Silence podcast with your host, Denise Walsh and Rachel Timothy.
Hey, you guys. Welcome back to Stop Suffering in Silence. My name is Denise Walsh, and I'm here with co-host Rachel Timothy. And before we dive into today's topic, I just want to say thank you for all of the feedback and comments we got on our latest video, which was all about our time in Illinois, breaking down brothels, one of the activities that we did. But we've heard from a lot of you that you are just as wound up about this as we are, and there's things that you want to be able to do to support women in your area. And so stay tuned, because we are creating some things, some training, some packets, some worksheets, some community that could support you in you taking action in your local area as well. So Rachel, is there anything that you want to add in terms of feedback we got from last episode before we dive into this topic today?
I'm like you. I've enjoyed hearing it, mainly because there's some of you who were like, I didn't know that that's what that was.
Yeah.
Like, what? And just the shock, and then the anger, I think. And, not only do you have the anger of that's what's happening here in my town, but then you have the anger of, wait a minute, that means the men in my community are supporting it. And it opens your eyes to things that you want to believe are elsewhere, but they're right here. So yeah, it's been great conversations. And it gives us an opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm trying something new. Oh,
sweet.
So I didn't know what it said, show headline, and I didn't know what that meant. So I'm practicing live. But now you should see our website underneath my name if you're interested in learning more about what we do. Donating, we are always looking for monthly donors to support the ministry, support the work we do with survivors, and of course ourselves too. So anyway, let's dive in, Rachel. I agree. Oftentimes people, when we share your story or we talk about trauma in general, people will say, well, what can we do? And one of the ways that you can support survivors is by believing their story. And so today what we're going to do is I'm going to share with you an overview of a recent civil suit that happened in Florida. I'm going to give Rachel like the entire overview of the case, and then we are going to watch the verdict together. And there's a few reasons why I think this is profound. Number one, when you feel and see her relief when the verdict comes in, all of these years of built up emotion, and she's seen, believed, heard, like, oh my gosh, that in itself is worth all the tears. But there's more that goes into it. So Rachel, I know I've kind of offline shared with you a bit about the Maya Kowalski case, but I'm going to give you an overview of it today. And if you know much about this case, or you know more details than I'm going to be sharing, post them in the comments below. Because this is an overview, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details of like everything, but I think this is a fascinating case, something that really garnered national attention for good reason. Are you ready?
Yes. Lay it on me.
Okay. So this is a case about a child who has a chronic disorder it's called CRPS. CRPS, what does it stand for? Chronic, let's see. Regional pain syndrome, complex regional pain syndrome. And basically what CRPS is your body is consistently fighting itself, it seems. And so it reminds me of fibromyalgia, but like whole nother level. So you get lesions on your skin, your feet, like some symptoms are your feet turn inward. I have pain to the touch. And so as a child who isn't feeling good, who starts to have pain, the family starts taking her to doctor, trying to figure out what it is. And most of the doctors they went to didn't really know. I don't know what this is. And in her records, it even said this could be conversion disorder, which is like made up in your mind. Like the pain feels real, but there's no real physical evidence for it. And so they call it conversion disorder, psychosomatic, that kind of thing. So even in some of the hospital records, as she's trying to figure out and her family's trying to figure out what's going on, there is some thought about that. Well, eventually, after going to doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor and not finding any relief or there's nothing that's helpful, they landed on Dr. Kirkpatrick. And Dr. Kirkpatrick is a CRPS specialist, and he was the one that diagnosed it as CRPS. And he said, this is what it is. And in reality, there's no real treatment for CRPS. You have to do physical therapy, maybe occupational, well, not occupational, there's physical therapy and, swimming, those types of things, strengthening, regular therapy to keep stress down, cognitive behavioral therapy to keep stress at bay because stress can exacerbate it. And then some pain medications can make it more comfortable, but it's really a chronic illness that flares up randomly. And so they started working with Dr. Kirkpatrick and doing a whole bunch of things. They did physical therapy, they did ozone, like if you heard those oxygen chambers where you go in and you get tons of oxygen to help ignite your cells. They did a lot of different things. And they also did ketamine. So ketamine, especially 10 years ago, was not something that was very widely known and something that people didn't know much about. But this 10-year-old little girl diagnosed with CRPS started to utilize ketamine as a treatment for CRPS. In fact, the ketamine treatments got so high, the dosage got so high that Dr. Kirkpatrick said, you know what, we can't do this. Really, the next step would be to go to Mexico and do what's called a ketamine treatment. So in Mexico, because it's not FDA approved, they can put someone in a ketamine coma, they call it, where they put someone in coma, flood their body with ketamine, and it kind of resets their nervous system and their pain receptors. And so they flew to Mexico. They did this ketamine coma. She's again 10 years old. And they felt some relief. It wasn't forever, but they were doing well. Well, when they get back, they are going through life, continuing to utilize. They ended up putting a port in so she could do ketamine a bit easier at home. I guess it's an IV type of situation. And she started to have a flare-up. So as the flare-up got worse, they decided to take her to the emergency room, where the emergency room at Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital in Tampa area, I think it's St. Petersburg, Florida, decided that the amount of ketamine that she was getting was way too high for any child. And they decided that it was Munchausen's by proxy, which means that the mom is making it all up. And so they called DCF, and DCF did some internal investigations and things, and they said, no, it's not. There's medical records that your hospital put in a port for the ketamine. She's doing doctor's orders. This is not something that she's doctor shopping or making up on her own. In fact, the mom herself was a nurse. And so, needless to say, the hospital said, I don't know about that. And they called another person named Dr. Sally Smith, who worked for another type of medical child abuse agency. And she started to investigate. And they decided, the court, I don't quite understand if DCF was a part of this, because their first thing said no. Their first investigation said no. But then eventually it was court ordered that the mom be separated from the child, because they thought that the mom was influencing the child's pain. And so the mom was separated from the child, and this 10-year-old little girl had to stay in the hospital by herself for 3 months. That as they did this investigation to see if she really had CRPS or if it was Munchausen by proxy, which basically means that the mom was making it up or making her daughter have symptoms for attention, that kind of thing. Her dad could come visit. Her brother could come visit. Like, she could have visitors, but she didn't have someone advocating for her in the hospital at all times. And so before I move into the next phase of the conversation, Rachel, what thoughts do you have about even just being in the hospital alone at 10 years old? Like, how would that traumatize someone?
Oh, absolutely.
Be like?
It would be awful. And I think even just leading up to that, having an illness like that is traumatizing. Having an illness that people don't have an answer for is traumatizing. But then here she is, the one person who is advocating for her. Now she's separated from that. I mean, my heart breaks for the girl. That's not okay.
And what was it, I just imagine as a mom, right? My child being told, you're not really sick. It's your mom's fault. And we're separating you for your own good, and not being allowed to go see my own child. They told the family that if they were to AWOL, like leave the hospital against medical advice, that they would be arrested and their children would be taken from them because CPS would get involved at that point. And so they were threatened and were unable, in their opinion, they were stuck there. They couldn't leave or else it could be worse for their family. But yeah, even just that alone is traumatizing.
Absolutely. I somewhat can relate in a different way, but I remember when I was an adult and things were extremely unsafe, it became, where if I'm unsafe, then, people started worrying about my kids and their safety. And it felt like me being around my kids was unsafe for my kids because of the threat that I was under. And it was devastating for me. And I don't know, it really it beats you up mentally in that moment to know that you love them so dang much, but you're learning that because of what you're going through, it's better for them not to have you around. And that broke my heart.
How did your kids handle that?
A lot of acting out started happening, and I will say this, we're now at a place where we're safe, and I'm able to be the mom that I've wanted to be, and I'm starting to see them heal from those years of trauma where things were so unstable. And it wasn't that I was in any way, shape, or form causing them harm. That wasn't at all it, but it just was the situation I was in. And yeah, you could see how it impacted them in many different ways.
Especially when this outside force says, I mean, it takes all control away. It takes control away from the mom and the parents who are doing what's best for their kids. It takes control away from the child who is only 10 and can't quite advocate for herself. It's these external people saying, oh, this is what you need. And what's heartbreaking is the mom, who had been advocating for this whole time, has taken tons of notes, who actually ended up recording a ton of the phone calls before, during, and after the hospitalization, because she was a nurse and she wanted to document everything. So even in Mexico, they documented things. And when she didn't know what she had, they documented things. And so she kept a lot of notes and a lot of documents, a lot of video. So for her to know what her daughter needs, and then for this hospital who has said, we don't know much about CRPS, we don't know much about this chronic illness, but yet we think you're making it up, and this ketamine is too high of a dosage, and clearly you're the problem, mom. And it was heartbreaking for her. The daughter is sitting there with nothing she can do to change her situation, and the mom is on the outside with nothing she can do to change the situation.
Yeah, I think you and I also, we hear from people that will say like, oh, I can't really be a part of your program because I wasn't trafficked, or whatever. Trauma is trauma. And this is a form of, it's not sexual abuse. It's not an assault necessarily, but it is abuse, and it's trauma, and it will still be stored in the body. It will still cause chaos in your life. Trauma is trauma, and this is definitely a version of it.
Absolutely. And it shifts your view of the world. And when
Yeah.
you live in an unsafe world, that shifts everything about your body chemistry. So for this 10-year-old girl, she learned in that moment that the world is unsafe and my family will be taken from me if I say what's happening, if I say I'm in pain, if I say that, like she learned to shut down, be quiet, because the world is out to get her, essentially.
Yeah.
So throughout those 3 months, the doctors did a few things that are up now in the civil suit. They recorded her without parent permission because they wanted to catch her being stronger than she was. So they were trying to document that she didn't really have CRPS. So they would video her. One of the times they put the bathroom, the little commode, like steps away from the bed, and then didn't come when she called the nurse, and she ended up soiling herself because they wanted to see if she could get up and go to the bathroom, if it was that big of, if she really had to go, could she go? She didn't. There were times where this is just like over the top, but the social workers would cross boundaries. So, for example, put her on her lap, and put her on their lap, and say things like, "I'll be your mom now. You can come home with me." Just like not appropriate.
No.
There was a time when a doctor in a like a coat came in and said, "Hi, I'm blah, 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 blah." And he looked under her pants and then left. And so they just now did a suit about that specific sexual allegation. So there were several inappropriate things that happened throughout her stay there that would not have happened if an advocate had been allowed to be there the entire time.
Right.
And so the courts continuing to get updates from Dr. Sally Smith, who is this medical abuse doctor, who's the one who basically said Maya is being abused by her mother. She's only relaying her version of the story. She's not relaying all of the evidence that they're finding. She's just relaying what she believes. And the court continues to say, sorry, no, you're not allowed to be with your mom. And so they brought her into the hospital, to the ER in October. She missed Halloween. She missed Thanksgiving. She missed her birthday. She missed Christmas. All of that was in the hospital. And then at the beginning of January, the following year, there was a court hearing where the judge said, no, you can't hug your daughter. Nope. Not only are you not allowed to be with her, not only are we thinking about putting your daughter in foster care, not only are we telling, like, she was being advised to get divorced from her husband so they could get her daughter home. But like the reality is the mom didn't believe that they were ever going to say, oh, mom, you're right. Or, oh, mom, you're fine to be back. From the way the court was talking, it was like when Maya gets out of the hospital, the mom still cannot be involved. And so that night after this court hearing where the mom was blocked again from even seeing or talking to her daughter, she committed suicide and she hung herself in their garage.
Wow.
And so Maya, at now 11, because she had a birthday in the hospital, remembers the last time she saw her mom. All right, I'm going to work. I'll come back tomorrow. And then she was never allowed to see her mom again. This was in October. They could talk on the phone for a bit, but that was always watched by a social worker. But after that, like, she was never able to say goodbye. She didn't understand why her mom wasn't able to come. So she finds out that her mom committed suicide. There's a whole suicide note. And she goes to the funeral. Within like 6 weeks, she's allowed to go back home. And so now she goes back home to her dad, her brother, in a whole new sling of circumstances where her mom is gone and never coming back.
Yeah.
And so they filed a civil suit against the hospital, basically saying if it weren't for the hospital, her mom would still be alive.
Mm-hmm.
Maya is now 17, 18. I think her birthday's in December. I wouldn't be surprised if she turned 18 in December. This happened when she was 10, 11 years old. They filed the lawsuit within a few years of, and so the suit itself has been going on for about 6 or 7 years.
That's crazy.
And so for those that don't know how, like, criminal, with a criminal suit, you have to have evidence to prove 99.9, like beyond a reasonable doubt, right? With a civil suit, it's just 51% that something nefarious was happening. And so throughout these 6 years of the depositions and gathering evidence against, you know, a multi-billion-dollar organization, a lot of things came up throughout that process. One of them being, one of the things that stood out to me was that the hospital wants evidence of Maya and her well-being. And so they continued to subpoena any records from any therapist, physical therapist, or psychological therapist that they could along the way. And so it impacted Maya's ability to heal and grow, and because she didn't feel safe in any of her treatments, knowing that the defense could subpoena any and all of their records, which just seems heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just prolongs the trauma. It prolongs the damage. I mean, though, that's one of the things that I have learned. Whenever you know something happens, an event happens that's traumatic, the sooner that you get the help, the sooner that you're able to see a response that is healthy, the easier you feel with it all. I don't know even how to explain it, but when you have a wound that festers for longer and longer and longer, it gets worse and worse and worse versus addressing it right then and there, getting the chance to heal it in that first moment. Not to say that this wouldn't have still impacted her, but the fact that she wasn't able to get the help that she needed, yeah, it's devastating, and it adds to the trauma.
It adds to the trauma. Yeah, it's horrible. And so through the trial was, I think, like 6 or 9 weeks. Like, it was a really long trial. And the verdict was just a few weeks ago. And so I started listening to the trial. I didn't listen to everything, but I listened to a lot of the witnesses. You can get the whole trial on Law and Crime YouTube channel. But I listened to a lot of the witnesses, and a couple things that, I mean, you just learn a lot about the justice system when you listen to this kind of stuff. And there's a lot of things that came up that I won't go into. But what I want to show you is the verdict. And for me, it's the emotional pressure that her entire family has been feeling, not just from the 3 months, not just from her mom no longer being there, but also from 6 years of battling the hospital, who won't admit any wrongdoing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you a bit of the verdict. I don't know that we need to listen to all of it. There's like a ton of different counts. They end up, I mean, they're asking for over 200 million in damages, or, you know, in all of that. And really what people would say is the reason why in a civil court you go after money is because that's the only sort of retribution people have. Like, there's no eye for an eye in this country. So
Right.
you can't go to the hospital and abuse them. can't go have their mothers be killed. The only retribution we have to compensate for wrongdoing is financial. And so while some people might say, who needs $200,000 or $200 million? The other side of it is in order for the hospital to take it seriously, it has to make a dent. And if it doesn't make a dent, then it's just like all these pharmaceutical companies who have lawsuit after lawsuit, and they don't care one bit because it doesn't even make a dent in their.
And so they continue to do the wrongdoing and abuse people.
Right. And they don't make any changes to the hospital system or whatever system it is. So it has to be. Now, some would say you don't have damages based on what they can pay, but also it does have, in my opinion, like there has to be some sort of suffering for them. It has to mean something or else things won't change.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to show you and so basically the judge has, or the jury has come in and the judge is now speaking.
Okay.
Now, one thing I want to mention is that when you are in a courtroom and the verdict is being read, you're not supposed to show emotion. So you're often not supposed to say, yes, woohoo, like the people in the audience are not supposed to say or do anything. And so just interesting information, because I think when you see what happens, like you can't not.
Okay, this is case number 2018 CA 5321, Jack Kowalski, etc. et al. Versus Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. I've been handed a note from the jury that reads as follows. We have reached a verdict. At this point, let's bring in this jury.
So one thing to recognize is that while Maya was 10, 11 years old when her mom passed away, Kyle, her brother, was like 8. And so it's just heartbreaking.
And so is that the dad there, or is that the judge? Or I mean the lawyer?
This is the dad. This
Okay.
is Maya, and this is her brother.
Oh.
Okay, members of the jury, welcome back. I have been told, or I've received a note from you that you have reached a verdict. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can the foreperson hand the verdict form to the court deputy who will bring it to me? Okay, you're going to ask the clerk to publish the verdict, please.
In the 12th Judicial Circuit in and for Sarasota County, Florida, case number 2018 CA 005321NC. Jack Kowalski, individually, Jack Kowalski as parent and next friend of MK, a minor, and Jack Kowalski as personal representative of the estate of Beata Kowalski plaintiffs versus Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital Incorporated defendant. Verdict form. We, the jury, return the following verdict. Claim 1, false imprisonment, October 7th through October 13th, 2016, Maya Kowalski. 1, did Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital falsely imprison Maya Kowalski without legal authority under circumstances that were unreasonable and unwarranted between October 7th and October 13th, 2016? Yes. 2, what is the total amount of Maya Kowalski's damages for the medical and psychological expenses to be incurred in the future after she reaches the age of 18 based on the false imprisonment occurring between October 7th and October 13th, 2016? $2,496,000. 3, what is the total amount of Maya Kowalski's damages for payment suffering, mental anguish, inconvenience, and loss of capacity for the enjoyment of life sustained in the past and to be sustained in the future, based on the false imprisonment occurring between October 7th and October 13th, 2016? $3 million. 4, what is the reasonable value or expense of hospitalization and medical, psychological, and nursing care and treatment?
So there's like 17 charges.
Anguish, inconvenience, and loss of capacity for the enjoyment of life sustained in the past and to be sustained in the future, based on the false imprisonment occurring on January 6, 2017.
And so we don't need to watch all of them. But what I thought was profound was just the validation after years and years and years for someone to believe her, for the jury to find it, her trauma, her pain, and her entire family's pain important and valid. They're going to appeal. Who knows how much money they'll end up getting. But for her and for the world to know that this happened, this isn't right, something needs to be done, like that in itself, I think is a huge piece of the healing process. And so anyway, I wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, super powerful. My heart breaks for all of them. I could see this, I don't know, or feel, or whatever it was, this feeling of, mom should be here right now. My mom should be here, and she's not. And you got to wonder, the guilt that, if I hadn't have had this medical issue, if I hadn't, but for the judge to say, no, it wasn't you, it was them. This isn't your fault. This is theirs. I hope that gives her a peace.
And yeah, there's so much that we could say in terms of her brother only knowing a life where the lawsuit was happening. There was showing of depositions about how she has a chronic illness and she is deathly afraid of doctors and hospitals. Now, it absolutely impacts their life. And so the emotional release for her and her family and the validation that they got is powerful. I was actually getting my eyelashes done when I was listening to this. My eyes are like taped shut and I'm just hearing her cry in my earphones. And I had listened to the trial, and I, of course, like, my holy discontent mama bear came out when I think of a 10-year-old being in the hospital by herself. And so I'm like crying with my eyelashes. But yeah. I feel like there's a sense of justice being done. And that's what I think the civil process is for. Nobody's going to necessarily go to jail. They may lose their jobs, but hopefully change will happen and they won't do this again to any other family.
Agreed. And then, definitely on that justice level, 100%. But take it down to just a personal level. Even you believing a victim is powerful and leads to a healing for the victim. Even you saying this isn't your fault. I do believe this happened. I believe what you're saying. I believe the pain that you went through. On a personal level, saying that to a victim, it's a justice in a sense. It's a validation that they need.
Yeah. Well, and as you said, the more quickly somebody has that feeling of being seen, heard, understood, then they can process through the grief, the trauma. If somebody is immediately told, oh, that's no big deal, then they're quiet, they stuff it, and they never actually are able to deal with it because they think, oh, this trauma isn't that big of a deal. It could be worse, or all the things that people are told. As soon as it's validated, like, yeah, that does suck. And this is hard. And that shouldn't have happened. It gives them the space to start really processing and moving through the grief process.
Yeah. Amen to that.
So anyway, thanks for listening. Let us know if you're interested in more kind of cases that come up, processing through either the case itself or the justice system. As much as we can tell from kind of we're more of a jury. We're not lawyers or anything like that. But from the jury standpoint and what we learn, and then, or if from the trauma survivor perspective of what even the process of going through a trial can look like, the validation that can happen when or if justice is served. let us know if you're interested. There's certainly cases all the time that we could deep dive into.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing this with us, Denise. I know you spent a lot of time looking into it and studying about it. And I love to hear when justice is served. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, you don't always get an answer like this. And this was one where we just are rooting for her. I think most people are, and nobody wants to see a hospital go down. But at the end of the day, the hospital can be redone in a way that actually serves its people better. So,
yep.
All right, you guys, thank you for hanging out with us. Please share your thoughts and comments down below. And if you are interested in working with us or having us speak at your events, definitely check out our website. There's a contact us form. We are opening up more programs come January and booking our 2024 calendar. So have an amazing day, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much for listening to this powerful episode of Stop Suffering in Silence. If you are interested in booking Rachel to speak at your school, your church, or on your podcast, then please email openblindeyes@protonmail.com. If you are interested in sponsoring a survivor on their healing journey and would like to donate to Stop SIS, then please check out the link in the description box or show notes below, or you can email stopsis@protonmail.com. And finally, if you are currently suffering in silence, or you know somebody who is, whether they're dealing with a current trauma or one from the past, then we will always recommend that you reach out to your local resources and find a counselor that you can trust, because nobody is meant to suffer alone. Have an amazing week, and thank you for being here.